So what I need you to do is, if you have a question, I will be answering questions at the end, and depending on how much time we have left at the end. So just put a question in. You can type the question in the right-hand bottom part of your dashboard where it says questions. So just type a question to me, and we'll address some of the questions at the end. If we don't get to some questions, then I will answer them via email afterward. Okay, so let's get started now that everybody has been kind of updated on, oh, you're welcome, and thank you, Bill. He says, thanks for taking the time to do this. So I am Jessica Anderson. I'm the sales specialist with I'm one of the sales specialists with Navionics. And I'm going to do a little presentation today on preparing to cruise the Caribbean and the Bahamas. So I'm going to start off by telling you why I would do a presentation like this, how I got involved in cruising the Caribbean and the Bahamas, and how I got involved in Navionics. Okay, so my story, we're going to start off with a little story. My story is I used to be a brain cancer researcher, and my significant other was a programmer. And we had a great life. We sailed and we went on vacations for a week or two, sailing around the Caribbean and the Bahamas. We dove all the time, but we'd always wanted to quit our jobs and just sail. You know, everybody wants to do that, right? They just want to be able to quit your job, walk it, and sail off into the sunset. Well, one day on my way home from work, I got in this really, really horrible car accident. It was 5 o'clock Friday afternoon, I-95 traffic. It was raining. Started spinning, and during one of my spins I had a huge truck bearing down at my face. He was just inches from me, and you know how they say that your life flashes before your eyes? Well, my future flashed before my eyes, all of the things I was never going to get to do, and one of those things was sailing the Caribbean and the Bahamas. So I finished spinning. He took out the whole back half of my car, and I walked away for the most part, and from that day forward, everything that we did was aimed at making that dream come true of sailing the Caribbean and the Bahamas. So we started looking for a boat, and we realized that you couldn't search specifically for what we wanted. We knew we wanted a wind generator, solar panels, and you couldn't search for that online. So we built it, and that's where e-boat listings came from. And the whole time that we were sailing, we found our boat, we quit our jobs. That was a really, really big step. We quit our jobs, both of us had really good jobs. And we quit our jobs, we sailed the Caribbean and Bahamas. It was an amazing trip. The whole time we did that, we used Navionics for navigation. And it was funny because when we got back from our trip, I was telling my friend about this Navionics thing. I was like, hey, have you seen this Navionics thing? It's really cool. And I knew he fished, and he said, sweetie, I'm the national sales manager for Navionics. So he started telling me about this program where they get people like me that actually use Navionics to do seminars and kind of teach people about what Navionics can do. So I started doing that because I absolutely love Navionics the whole way. So that's where Navionics came in. So in this, now that you know my story and how I got involved, in this webinar I'm going to talk about planning, your budgeting, financial stability. That's the absolute #1 thing that keeps people from doing this. Number 2, what boat do you need, and how do you find that boat? And the biggest section is going to be outfitting your boat. We're going to talk about water on your boat, electricity, navigation, communication, and your dinghy. So most people think that their finances are just absolutely at a place that it's impossible for them to leave to go cruising. So what we looked at a few things, and we said, you know, what do we really spend our money and time on? And if you look at your day, you spend a lot of time sleeping, you spend a lot of time working, and then you spend a lot of time getting ready for work, going lunch while you're at work, preparing for work, getting dressed for work, buying your clothes to go to work, buying insurance for your car to go to work, all of that money and time that you spend to go to work. So we figured if we could just get rid of that cost of work, maybe we could actually do this. So I have a quick poll for everybody here. How much time do you think that you spend at work or doing work-related things? Okay, I've gotten the votes coming in. Ooh, still got more coming in. And some people are actually saying, what is work? Does happy hour count? That's great. Oh, I still got votes coming in. Okay, I'm going to close it out and we're going to share the results. So it looks like a good many of you spend your time 50 to 80 hours a week on work-related things. And then 20% of you 30 to 50 hours. So a few of you actually don't spend that much time at work or work-related activities. That's great. Some of you can't count that high. That's either some sort of education there, or you just work way, way too much. And this is my point, that, see, a lot of you do spend a lot of time at work, and the same applies for the money. The money also is going toward work. So once we looked at our finances closer, and we figured out that if we got rid of those work expenses, and we looked at what we really, really spend money on before our trip, what is it that's really essential, and what's just fluff stuff? I mean, do we really need to go out to eat all that much? Do we really need those $5 lattes? So I know that's like the absolute typical thing that you hear, but it's very true. And the point is not so that you can stop right now spending money on those things. The point is so that you understand that those costs are not going to be there when you're cruising. So apply this to your cruising plans. Think about what you're actually going to be using when you're cruising. Water, food, some travel expenses, repairs on your boat, but you're not going to have to pay for the car insurance, the mortgage, and that's the next thing. You need to run your own numbers to determine if it's better for you to, if you own your house, is it better for you to liquidate, to sell everything, to sell your house, your cars, or to rent things out and put things in storage? Think about how much it's going to cost to put it in storage. How long is your trip? Is the price going to weigh out? For us, we rented our condo, we sold all of our cars, and we everything that we could get rid of, we sold. We sold all the furniture we could, and then whatever furniture was left, we made a deal with the renter of our condo that he had to keep everything that we couldn't sell. So there was no storage. There was no storage cost, which saved us a lot of money. One piece of advice here is to make sure to get a lease on your renter because we actually have two condos, and one of our condos, the renter did actually, who was a friend, did actually leave his unit, and we had that extra bill every month, that mortgage that we didn't intend on having. So absolutely get a binding lease even if it's a friend, if you're going to rent your place. The next question is, do you buy a cheaper boat, or do you buy a newer boat that's going to be more expensive? You're going to have a payment, but you're going to have a lot less maintenance. So with us, we had a 1981 Hunter, 30-foot Hunter, before the boat that we bought for cruising, which was a 2007 Veneto. With the Hunter, you know how they say that cruising is just, what do they say, fixing your boat in tropical places or exotic places? Well, that was us with the Hunter, and we were always fixing something, constantly. So that's why we decided to go with the newer boat, the 2007 boat. It wasn't brand new, and we got a good deal on it, but we absolutely made a lot fewer upgrades and fixes, and we got to enjoy the trip a lot more than if we had bought an older boat. So that's, if you enjoy working on your boat and you don't mind working on your boat in exotic locations, then an older boat with a lower price tag might be a better deal, a better option for you. That's kind of a personal choice. I would suggest establishing a nest egg of at least 3 times your monthly cruising budget. There are going to be things that come up. You're going to need to fix your boat times that you didn't anticipate it. You're going to need to go home at certain times that you didn't really anticipate. Sometimes you just have to buy a plane ticket and go home for some emergencies. And for cruising the Caribbean, also don't forget to budget in the customs and the check-in fees. The Caribbean is made up of a lot of different countries. A lot of these islands are different countries, so that's a lot of different check-in fees. Check in and check out. It's a lot of time too. So if you're going to do the Caribbean over a few years, it doesn't make that big of an impact. But if you're going to be doing the Caribbean over a few months, that's a lot of checking in and checking out fees to have in a short period of time. So things to think about. In the follow-up email to this webinar, I'm going to give you, there's a link to the presentation, and in the notes, you're going to have access to a lot of different links. So definitely check those out. I have a link here for an article, How to Retire in Your 30s and Sail Off into the Sunset. What does it cost to cruise? That's from Cruising World. And what does it cost to go cruising from Sail Fair Live Free? Okay. So the next question is what kind of, forgot that one. This one's really important. So finances are the absolute biggest thing that keep people from leaving to go cruising. One thing you need to think about is you don't have to be ready to cruise for 20 years before you leave. A lot of people say, oh, I need this and I need that and everything has to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have a huge amount of money. Just have enough money to go even for a few months. If you just go for a few months, you have that experience. And if you don't just bite the bullet and go, that's the thing you're going to regret. So Mark Twain said, 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones that you did. Throw off the line, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, and discover. This is absolutely true. And you know, if you can afford to go for a month, do it. If you can afford to go for 20 years, do it. You won't regret it. You will regret what you didn't do. So what kind of boat do you need? We already talked about new versus used. Size, the typical size is usually between 38 and 48 feet for a couple that's out cruising. Ours was a 39 foot, as I was saying before, and it was plenty of room. For me, Daryl was a little bit, he thought it was a little small, so he kind of wished we had a catamaran. But we also had our lab with us, our Labrador Retriever, Sugar, and she kind of wished for the catamaran too because of stability and because of more room. She loved our friend's catamaran. So that's another thing, monohull versus catamaran. Which one is better for you? Monohull is really, it's great for open water sailing. It's very, very safe. But catamarans are a lot more stable and for cruising places like the Caribbean where there's not a lot of danger and not so much wind that you have to have a really, really sturdy, like absolutely can never flip it over, and if it flips over, it's going to flip back up on its own boat. Honestly, when we do it again, we'll get a catamaran because of the stability. Sugar was so much happier. I point backward because she's sitting right behind me, so if you hear a bark, that's what it is. Sugar just loved the catamaran, and if you have toddlers or small children, it's definitely easier on them. And it's also easier if you have glasses and wine bottles and things like that. But there are also some really good things about monohulls too, the safety, and you can heel, and it's exciting. And so this is a personal choice. Draft is really important if you're going to be sailing the Bahamas because the Bahamian Islands are made from reefs, and so it's very shallow, a long way out from the islands. So you want a shallower draft if possible. Ours was a 5-1 draft, and we did end up dinghying into the islands a good bit, or swimming in. And I mean, you do always have your dinghy, but sometimes it's just nice to be able to pull up a little bit closer, which is another reason for a catamaran. They have a lot shallower draft. So the number of cabins and heads is also something to consider. With our boat, there were two options. One had two cabins and one head. With us, we chose the 3 cabins and 2 heads because we knew we were going to have a lot of friends aboard. So the cabins and heads is completely a personal decision based on the number of people you're going to have on your crew and how many friends you're planning on having. So how do you find exactly what you're looking for? For us, we knew exactly what we wanted, which is why we ended up building a whole other website. But you can use Yacht World and Boat Trader. I have those listed here. Those are the typical go-tos for finding a boat. You can also, of course, get a broker, and they're very, very helpful with finding boats that are well suited for your needs. We built eBoat listings because we wanted to be able to find exactly what we wanted. And here you can see that you can search by the different specs, the engine, the equipment. So you can search for a Beneteau with a wind generator, a solar panel, and an autopilot. And that's all under equipment. You can save your searches so that you have very, very detailed searches. So if you know what you want and you have a very detailed search, then I would suggest using eBoat listings, but the other sites are good as well for more basic searches. So outfitting your boat. This is a very, very, very common question among people that are looking to go cruising. What do you want on your boat? What did you get beforehand? This is a list for you. I won't go through everything here, but some of the things that we found were very, very useful were bilge pumps, obviously. Your boat is going to come with bilge pumps on it, but you want to have extra bilge pumps, believe me. One day, and tapered wooden plugs, which are pictured here. The tapered wooden plugs actually came on our Hunter the first time our first sailboat, and we said, what in the world are these? Why do we ever need these? We should take these off. Thank goodness I didn't, because one day a friend was helping us scrape the bottom of the boat. We live on the intercoastal, so it just was covered in barnacles. So he's scraping, and our friend that was still on the boat came over and said, hey guys, the boat's sinking. And we're like, what boat? What's sinking? He's like, this boat. Well, we go scrambling on board, and indeed, there were about 2 feet of water inside the boat, and our friend had scraped a through hole completely through, and water was coming in a 4-inch hole. So these tapered wooden plugs were very, very important. Grab those tapered wooden plugs, put it into the hole, stop the gushing water, and we use the extra bilge pumps to pump out the water. And the bilge pump, another thing is, of course, D-rings, shackles, just extra things that you might need on a boat that could be a little bit harder to find in more remote places in the Caribbean. And in the Bahamas especially, there's some very remote islands that you just are not going to be able to, you could be a few days sail from anything like this. I've got a basic list of tools here. Most of these things we could purchase from West Marine, and in the presentation that you'll have a link to in the follow-up email, in the notes of this slide, I do have some links here to part numbers, and also a great article on suggested cruising gear from West Marine. And the safety equipment also, the things that we found most important were, well, the EPIRB, that was for my parents to feel better about us being out on the water and away from people. We never had to use them, thank goodness, but it did make us feel better. The first aid kit, just because of the Band-Aids mostly, but it was nice to have. Harnesses. We did use harnesses a good bit when it got rougher, just in case. And the life raft was nice to know we had. Thank goodness didn't have to use that. The manual bilge pump, lifesaver, because our bilge pump went out right in the middle of a torrential downpour in Puerto Rico, and we did not have an extra bilge pump. This is why you bring an extra bilge pump. So I'm manually pumping the bilge as hard as I can, trying to keep us from sinking, and Daryl goes out in the dinghy and goes to try to find a bilge pump. He pays about 3 times as much as he'd have to pay in the mainland U.S., but it didn't matter at that point because we were sinking. So that manual bilge pump definitely saved us. So the next thing we're going to tackle is water on your boat. I've got another poll here for you. I'm going to shoot this out to you. How much water do you think that you use in a day? Just think about yourself, not your whole family. Okay, I've got the results coming in. There are actually some people that don't drink, bathe, or brush their teeth. Okay, I'm going to close up the poll and share it with you. So, 56% of you think you use about 10 to 30 gallons a day. And some of you might actually already be living on a boat, so you know the answers to these questions. But 8% of you don't drink, bathe, or brush your teeth. That's good to know for when we shake people's hands. So only a few of you think that it's 50 to 100 gallons, and 8% think it's more than 100 gallons. So that's really interesting. The average American uses about 100 gallons of water a day. And our freshwater tank on our boat was 90 gallons. So think about that. 2 people, 90 gallons. But at home, we probably used about 100 gallons a day. That means that we would need to fill up that water tank about every 12 hours. Let me tell you, it takes a few hours to fill it up anyway, because you have to sail to port, you have to get into the port, you have to go find somebody to pay, and it takes a while to fill up the water tank. And sometimes you even have to sail a few days out of your way to fill up the tank. So water is a big thing to think about when you're cruising. Potable water should be used for drinking. I say, quote, showers, because we only took real showers very, very seldom. Our showers were always a competition of who could use the least water. Daryl always won that because his average shower was about half of a cup of water. There were a lot of washcloth showers. Washing clothes is another one that you would use fresh water for, though that is also a, quote, washing clothes, because it was I usually washed them by hand in salt water and then did a really, really small rinse in fresh water. And actually, that's one of the things that I wish that I had gotten was a hand washer, not just my hand, and you'll see that at the very end in the list of things that I wish I had. If your boat is using fresh water for the head, then it is plumbed incorrectly, more than likely. It should not be using water out of your tank to flush the head. It's a huge waste. That does not mean that your head should not be going into the holding tank. Your head must be going into the holding tank, but it should not be using fresh water to flush it. How did we do laundry? Well, like I said, by hand. How did we shower? Well, like I said, with a washcloth. Every now and then a teeny tiny shower. Water maker or not, absolutely. And when we were planning this trip, we said, you know, it's a lot of money. It's more maintenance. We probably don't really need it. But oh my goodness, looking back, I wish we had gotten a water maker. If I could choose one thing to do differently, I would get the water maker. So water maker, I mean, that's a personal decision, but I would definitely have gotten a water maker. Rainwater collection, I saw a lot of different people collect water in different ways. And we did collect rainwater every now and then if it was just pouring down rain with just putting containers out on the deck. And actually that was a good way to take showers too. But we did not have a serious rainwater collection system. There are some that are pre-made and they're very good. I would suggest having some kind of rainwater collection system, though it's not essential by far. So moving on to communications, we had Wi-Fi on our boat because we installed a long-range Wi-Fi antenna. And in the notes in this presentation that you'll get again in the follow-up email, I have a link to an and here, here too, you have a link to this video. We created a video on how to install this long-range Wi-Fi system, and we could get Wi-Fi up to 5 miles offshore, which was really nice. We didn't have to pay for satellite or anything. The Wi-Fi we found in the Caribbean was fairly slow. It pretty much could do what most people need to do. Our business, of course, was an online business, so web development was a bit hard on that speed Wi-Fi. But usually you can find Wi-Fi at somewhere within a couple miles offshore if you have this long-range Wi-Fi system. We got weather. I'm going to actually address weather in the next slide too, but we got weather from a few different websites and from our Navionics app, so I'm going to go through that in a little bit. Cell phones. We did not have cell phones, and we were very, very grateful for that. If we could do one thing differently, it would absolutely not be that we would have a cell phone, because we really enjoyed not having a cell phone. Some people, we did have cell phones with us, and we would turn them on if we were expecting guests and we had to make communication. But other than that, I would say no cell phones. Satellite communications, we did not have a satellite or AIS. AIS is an automatic identification system for those of you that don't know, and SSB radio. We didn't have any of these, and we didn't miss them. I think that if you're cruising across, and those of you who have cruised longer distances, please feel free to put comments in the questions section. But I think that the satellite AIS and SSB is more important for when you're doing more long-range cruising and more offshore cruising. The Caribbean and Bahamas, most islands are within eyesight. Not all of them, but it's relatively short distances between islands, and we just found that we didn't need any of these things. So onto the weather. We used our Navionics app to get the weather. So like I was saying, we used Navionics the whole time that we were cruising. We used it for our navigation, we used it for wind, we used it for weather. So when you have Navionics, and another reason that we love Navionics is because you can put the app on your iPad or tablet, and you don't have to have Wi-Fi, and this is a huge thing, you don't have to have Wi-Fi and you don't have to have cell signal. The internal GPS in these will keep track of you. All you have to do is to make sure to download the app. When you do have either Wi-Fi or cell signal, download the app and make sure you have your map, the section of the map that you want to use, downloaded. So once you have that data on your phone or iPad or tablet, once you have that data, it's there. So you don't have to have any of those signals when you're out cruising. It followed us perfectly the whole time. It was absolutely amazing. So when you want to check weather, you are going to need some kind of connection. So while we had Wi-Fi, we would go to into our Navionics app, click Menu, and then under Menu is Weather and Tides. And once you click Weather and Tides, you can see there's a section here for wind, and if you click that wind section, it's going to download the wind forecast for the next 7 days or so, and it'll play through it, changing the wind vectors as it goes. So it's really helpful for planning crossings and even planning where your anchorages are going to be and things like that. We used another couple of websites. Passage Maker is one website. I've got the other websites listed in the notes section of this slide in the presentation. Those, of course, are not built into Navionics. This is why we like the Navionics so much, because it was built into the maps. And so the next thing that we had to consider was electricity and powering the boat. This is where Libby and John are experts. We knew that we wanted a wind generator and solar panel. In fact, we ended up getting a boat that was not equipped with a wind generator or solar panel. But we ended up purchasing a KISS wind generator and from Libby and John with Hotwire, and we absolutely loved it. It was great. It met all of our needs. And when you are thinking about if you should get wind or solar, you can look up pilot charts. And thank you, John, for explaining this. Pilot charts are used to show wind patterns in your throughout the world in different sections of the world. It'll show wind patterns by the month, by the region in the world. So you can look to see where you are going to be and what the wind is doing at that time. So where we were going, we knew we were going to be in the Caribbean in the winter time, and the Caribbean is known to have their Christmas winds. So we knew that it would be really windy. And then we thought we would be in the Bahamas in the summer, and that's really sunny. So we thought, well, we should do wind and sun and solar panel. Well, we bought our boat in the USVI, so it was actually really hard for us to get the actual hardware to put the solar panels in. So we ended up getting the KISS wind generator. And with the other thing that we considered was a generator. And a lot of times people think they absolutely have to have a generator. But for us, the KISS wind generator met all of our electrical needs without needing the generator. And usually air conditioning is the thing that makes you need a wind generator, not a wind generator, a generator. AC is the one thing that is hard for wind and solar to kind of keep up with. John, I'm gonna call on you at the end for some questions for the solar and wind, and we're gonna keep moving for now. But the boat power consumption, you should probably try to do a little calculation of the boat power consumption, how much you think you're going to use, how much electricity you're going to use on your boat. We have a tool on our blog that is used to calculate how much power you think you're going to need. So that link is here and also in the notes. And here you can see me on the back of the boat and our KISS wind generator just going at it. So we did love that generator. It was endless hours of fun watching it. Now the next thing that you should think about is dinghies and davits. I'd say yes, 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 yes. So dinghies, your dinghy is your lifeline to land. Lifeline. It brings in your food, unless of course you're just jumping over and shooting something or bringing it in. It brings in your supplies. It gets you to the fun. You're going to use it for going out snorkeling and all kinds of things. So spend money on your dinghy. If you're not going to spend money on anything else, spend it on the dinghy. I would suggest a hard bottom dinghy if you can afford it. And having a bigger engine over a smaller engine is nice. Something newer that's not going to break is nice. And davits, we did not have davits, and that's another thing that we absolutely will have next time is dinghy davits, because winching that thing up onto the bow of the boat and strapping it down every time we did any kind of crossing was kind of a pain. So davits, yes. Spend money on your dinghy, yes. And here you can see our dinghy over on the right hand side here, and this is Patches, and you can guess why I named her Patches. Now, outfitting your boat for navigation. So this is an interesting question here I have for you. I've got another poll here. Who do you think is the most important member of your crew? Wow, I've got results coming in. It's kind of surprising. Wow, I'm really surprised actually. There must be some cruisers in here already. Okay, I'm going to give it another few seconds. Okay, so take a look. I am kind of surprised that 46% of you said autopilot. Only 4% said captain. 25% said barmaid. Okay, so that's great because it is, I mean, that's a close call, barmaid and autopilot. Absolutely, I would say that autopilot is your most important member of your crew. That's the one member of your crew that doesn't need to sleep and is not going to complain about being on watch. it makes all the difference in the world. That is one of the things that I was very, very, very grateful to have. It came on our boat, but if it didn't, we definitely would have gotten it, and absolutely essential. I mean, not essential like your boat isn't going to work without it, but man, it makes life a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable. You can sit back and have a rum and coke while autopilot's doing its little thing over there. So one of the questions that a lot of people asked was percent of sailing versus playing just at anchor. And I would say that about 90% of our time was, that's not sailing versus motoring. 90% of our time was sailing versus motoring. Probably, we usually traveled about 3 days a week, and we played all the rest of the days. And that's because we were kind of in a little bit of a hurry, because we started in USVI, and we went between USVI and Puerto Rico for a couple months because we were waiting for a friend to get married. And then we went down the chain to Dominica, back up to the Bahamas in less than a year. So we were kind of in a bit of a hurry. If it wasn't for that, we definitely would have stayed longer at each spot. And that's completely dependent on how much time you have to travel, and also how many friends you have invited, and for when and where. This is a big thing with cruising. A lot of people invite friends, and then they decide when and where to pick them up, and then they end up cruising or sailing in weather that they shouldn't be sailing in, or just missing things that they want to see. We missed quite a few islands in the Exumas, though we had been to Exumas a lot before, because we had friends that were coming and had to be in Eleuthera. So for your guests, they can pick when or they can pick where, but they can't pick both. That would have saved us a lot of time and trouble. Choosing your anchorages and destinations. We're actually going to go through that in the next webinar. So definitely join in for the next webinar. I'll be sending out an email to tell everybody about the next webinar that will be coming up. And like I was saying, the sailing versus motoring was about 90%. Our boat got half a gallon to an hour, and we used about $500 worth in the whole trip. So you can do the math. Is about 100 gallons for the whole trip. That was mostly for getting places when we had to pick somebody up, like I was saying, and getting into port to get gas and water. So electronics and navigation on your boat are going to be a really important choice for you. You have a lot of options, and you can do chart plotters and GPS and radar. You can have all of that fancy equipment, and it really is nice to have. When you have a standalone chart plotter, you can get chips for your chart plotter that are going to have the data on it. Those chips, Navionics makes chips that go on most chart plotters, and you can spend anywhere from $500 to thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on chart plotters and radar and all of that equipment. For us, we actually went kind of for the budget option, and next time we will purchase a chart plotter and all of that extra equipment. That is really nice to have and is really helpful, especially now that chart plotters have Wi-Fi and you can sync your iPad with the chart plotter, with the Raymarine chart plotter. It's called Plotter Sync with the Navionics app. But at the time, we were, as I was saying, everything that we did was aimed at leaving no matter what. So we chose to put the Navionics app on a tablet, and then we used the tablet for all of our navigation. And one of the things that Navionics has out now is it's called a VexLR box, and this is a transducer that goes on your boat, and it connects to a Wi-Fi producer. The Wi-Fi producer makes a local Wi-Fi signal. It's not internet. It makes a local Wi-Fi signal so that any smart device on your boat can connect to that Wi-Fi signal, so that anybody with a smartphone or a tablet or an iPad can connect to that, and they can see a live sonar reading on their device. You can see a live sonar reading at the bottom right there on your chart plotter. And now, they didn't even stop at that. Now, the data that's collected goes into your map and actually updates the map behind you real time. It's called Sonar Charts Live. And you can get all of this for about $205 between the app and the T-Box. So absolutely amazing value here. So I'm going to show you a quick video on Sonar Charts Live. It's really amazing how this works. So like I was saying, that it's absolutely amazing how, oh, that light is really bright. Let me turn that. Okay, never mind. This is absolutely amazing how the maps can be updated behind you. It uses your own data, so you have the absolute latest data. So in summary, we were really, really happy, like I was saying, that we had an autopilot, a wind generator, our tablet with our Navionics app, a wind list. Some of these things in the lists I didn't go over, and I am going to go over in my next webinar. Wind list being one of them. A refrigerator, anchor, chain instead of rope, road. That's I'm also going to go over in the next webinar. And so this is these lists you can refer to. The things that we wish we had, like I was saying, the water maker, 2 holes, a catamaran would have been nice. A nicer dinghy. Patches. She did a valiant job, but she did fall short at times when I was pumping her up in the mornings for an hour before we could use her. Dinghy davits, a manual clothes washer, which is also actually available through Hotwire, and more clothespins. You can never, ever, ever have too many clothespins, and you'll have to ask some of the Navionics people what they call sailors who use too many clothespins. It's really quite funny. And what we didn't need, air conditioning. We were really surprised that we absolutely never needed air conditioning. We spent most of our time on the hook, not in marinas, so we didn't need air conditioning. We got a nice breeze the whole time, and we didn't need so many holes and patches. So thank you so much for everybody for coming. I'm going to address a few questions now. Let me take a look at some of these questions. How much time? So how much time do we spend on board, sailing, mooring, on land, sightseeing, hiking, snorkeling, and fishing? That's a good question. I should put together a pie chart for you for the next webinar. But for a quick answer, on board, pretty much on board was when we were sailing. We spent very little time on sailing or sleeping. We didn't spend that much time on board, because we were usually either on the islands exploring. Sugar always liked to explore with us, and of course she kind of required her land breaks, and or we were out snorkeling, and so yeah, the time on the boat was really limited. Sightseeing, we kind of limited the actual touristy type thing. We preferred to go to the places that were a lot less frequented. So sightseeing depends on how you define that. Snorkeling, a lot of time. Fishing, we always had a fishing line out when we were sailing, but we actually really kind of suck at fishing, and we're spear fishermen, and we spent a lot of time spearfishing once we got to the Bahamas. Spearfishing is not spearfishing only with non-trigger spears in the Bahamas. Spearfishing is not allowed in a lot of the Caribbean, which we were really surprised with, and honestly a little disappointed with, because we were really into spearfishing. So, and of course we were kind of planning on using that for some of our food. So we ended up actually spending more money in the Caribbean on food than we had anticipated because of that. Did you really have a lot of friends visit? I've heard, Brian, thank you for asking this. I've heard a lot say they'll come but don't. That's a great question. Yes, yes, and yes. We had a lot of friends visit, and people that I assumed the same thing. Yeah, there's no way these people are coming. They came, and they came in droves. So yes, I think when you offer people a free place to stay in the Caribbean and the Bahamas, they will come. you build it, and they will come. Mark, did you have a high output alternator? Size of the battery bank. We had about 600 amp battery bank. We had three house batteries and a starting battery, and we found that it was plenty. And actually, this is something that that you could contact John and Libby about at Hotwire. They're familiar with batteries. Let me take a look at a couple of these other questions. How hard was it to provision fresh food? Todd. Thanks for asking, Todd. Food provisioning was not that hard if you're willing to walk, because most of the places that are close by marinas and easy access points for dinghies were very expensive. Fresh food, pretty easy, because they had a lot of market type, farmers market type places in the Caribbean. However, they were much more expensive than we thought they would be, and I think they kind of can tell that you're a cruiser and you don't really get the locals price. So if you can have a friend, if you can meet some local people, I think that ends up being very helpful. Okay, here's a dog question. Except there's so many questions being added, I can't keep up. Okay. John, were you able to take your dog on all the islands, and was there any paperwork needed? Okay, I'm going to do another webinar on this, and that is a very, very, very long answer. And no, we could not take Sugar on all the islands by far. A lot of the islands require a year period of keeping them apart from everybody, quarantine. And for a few days on the island, it just wasn't worth it. A lot of the islands also required a lot of paperwork that was just absolutely out of this world ridiculous. So we did a lot of online research before we left, and we ended up skipping a few islands because of those things. One island in particular, we had heard stories of people, of authorities shooting dogs on site on that island, and it was actually St. Kitts. But we had been sailing for about a day, and Sugar had not had a land break. And this is a whole other story, but I spent years training her to go to the bathroom on command, and she would do it on land, but she would absolutely not do it on the boat. And oh, believe me, I spent so many heartbroken hours trying to get her to go on the boat, and I did so many things to try to get her to go on the boat, but she wouldn't. So we ended up, I swam so many times to shore with her, and of course we took the dinghy, but we swam to shore at St. Kitts, and the one island that I was scared to death to take her on because I had heard these horror stories. And I ran into a few people, and they were all very, very nice. Granted, none of them were authorities, but they were very, very nice. All of them were, and we had no incidents. But I got her to land. She pottied, did her business, and then we got back to the boat. So tune in for another one of my webinars with for information about the dog. Can anybody hear me? Because I'm getting a lot of I can't hear you. Okay, okay, good. Thank you, Tim, Brian, John. Okay. Average cost of customs clearance, Bruce. That's a good question. It's very varied. It's everywhere from $5 to I think the highest one was like $150. And some of them give you clearance by the day. The BVIs, you have to buy a daily pass. Some other places are by the week. So it's and honestly, I'm pretty sure that some of it changes depending on the person that you get and the mood that that person is in. So what you see online sometimes is not going to be exactly what you find in real life. We found the biggest problem that we ran into was in the Dominican Republic, actually, and they took it was about 10 o'clock at night, and they took Daryl away from the boat, made him go to an ATM to get money, and it was just they took all the money we had. They took potato chips, our sodas, a cell phone. They took everything they could possibly take, all of it just by flashing their badge and saying, hey, you've got to do this or you're kicked out. And we were picking up a friend there, so we kind of just had to do it to wait for our friend to come in. We were only there for 24 hours, and it was by far the most expensive stop we made our whole trip. But I've heard a lot of people say that they had really great experiences in the Dominican Republic. So I think it kind of is where you end up and who you end up running into. Did you ever get, oh, that's a great question. Did you ever get scared? I got to tell you, on this trip, I had learned to not be scared of the boat and how much it could handle. Our Hunter, we went through a horrible storm on the Hunter. It covered the whole east coast of Florida. The Coast Guard pretty much was like, yeah, good luck. I had called into the Coast Guard, and it was about 18-foot waves, and it was horrible. I ended up breaking my rib in that storm. But on that trip, I said, there's no way I'm ever sailing again, ever. But I did, and we ended up going on this trip, and by that point I had learned that the boat can take a lot more than I can take. So I learned to trust her and to know that she would always take care of us. So no, I never really got scared on this trip, even with some of the huge waves we encountered. That was a great question. Did you bring bikes, Tim? No, we didn't bring bikes, though I kind of wish we had, but there was a key problem with bikes for us. Whenever we went to shore, we had Sugar with us, and Sugar, she can keep up for a little while on bikes, but that's kind of fast for her because she'd be running to keep up with bikes. So so it actually worked out for us to not have bikes, but next time, like, if we don't have a dog next time with us, then we would take bikes. They are definitely nice to have. We saw a lot of cruisers that had them, and they were really useful. What was your approximate monthly budget? Okay, that's a really good question. Obviously, some months we had some expenses that were much bigger than other months. Our refrigerator went out at one point, so that was expensive to fix. But our monthly budget was about $1,000 a month. We spent between $500 and $1,000 a month, but usually toward the $500 end. We found that we spent more money on food in the Caribbean than we anticipated because we were planning on eating more fish than we did. So we ended up buying more food. Dog food was actually really expensive everywhere, so Sugar ended up eating a lot of lobster. But yeah, between $500 and $1,000 a month. $12-volt or 110-volt water maker? That would be a question for the experts. So I'm gonna let let someone else email you about that because we did not have a water maker. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, so choosing between a solar panel and a wind generator, I am going to defer to John and let him give you a little bit of information on how you choose between a solar panel and a wind generator. John?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Basically, if you wanted to run your boat most of the time with just solar panels, you need to have a catamaran with a lot of hardtop where you can put the solar panels. Most monohulls simply don't have enough room for all the solar panels you'd need. You could just get by on a boat with a big arch with three pretty good-sized panels up there. The first thing to consider, though, is, first of all, you need to reduce your energy usage, make the boat as energy efficient as is practically possible. Then you don't need as much wind or solar panels. If you're going to be someplace where it's not windy, then the wind generator won't work, and that includes the northern Bahamas in the summertime, most of the southeast U.S., if you're going to be someplace where there's always lots of wind, like the Virgin Islands, then a wind generator alone might be enough. My ideal would be some of each, wind and solar, because when you're sitting underneath a high-pressure dome, you have very clear sky, lots of sun. And when a weather system is coming through, you typically have clouds and wind. Also, in the summertime, especially in the Caribbean, the winds are lighter. So in the summertime, you have more energy from the sun that's available. In the wintertime, you have the Christmas winds, and the wind generator can generate a lot of energy. And the sun's much lower in the sky, so you don't get as much solar. So the best would be both, but failing that, make your boat energy efficient and choose whichever is going to work best for your cruising grounds.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, John, for that information. And if anybody has more questions about solar and wind, then feel free to visit hotwire.com. They were absolutely so useful to us. John with Navionics. Are you there?
Actually, this is Tashambe.
Oh, hey, Tashambe.
How are you?
I just was going to ask if what would you suggest for people that are going to be in the Caribbean or the Bahamas for if they were going to purchase a chip? Would it be better to have a like a Raymarine or a Garmin, or what would your suggestion be?
Right. Well, a lot of that is going to depend on what you're used to. So I would say, first off, if you're used to a particular type of GPS chart plotter, if you've used Raymarine before, if you've used Garmin before, if you've used Navico before, stick with what you know. That's the first part. And then secondly, it's going to depend on budget to some extent as well. So you mentioned earlier that the price range can be significantly varied, and that's true. You can pay a lot of money on these, so budget is also going to come into play. So the first thing I would say is stick with what you're used to. If you're not used to anything, I would definitely suggest comparing some of the GPS chart plotters, and you can do that at many of the big box stores like West Marine, Bass Pro, or Cabela's. Go in, compare, look at all the different options there, and you'll get some real good suggestions from some of the folks at those stores.
Okay, thank you so much, Tashambe.
Okay.
Okay, whatever questions I didn't get to, I will email you, and I really appreciate everybody joining me. I'll be emailing you with further webinars. We'll be having a few more follow-ups. I have a whole series on getting you ready to cruise the Caribbean and the Bahamas, and good travels and good luck.